I want to welcome everybody to today's special conversation with Councilmember David Ryu. Thank you, Councilmember, for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time and attention to everything that's happening, really. We have a lot going on, not only in the city, but in the country. And I know that we're all dealing with coronavirus and with the unrest from the George Floyd murder, and there's just a lot of stuff that's emotional, and a lot of things that we're all dealing with, both personally and obviously with our businesses. So today we want to discuss what's going on, not only with reestablishing and reopening our businesses, but also, how can we do that safely in the current environment? So we're gonna have the council member talk for a little while, and then we're gonna open it up to a moderated question and answer period. And what I encourage you to do is to please type your questions. If you go to the chat function, you will see an area for questions. So as the councilman's talking and you get questions that you want to have raised, please type your questions in there. Do not type them in the chat area, because I won't be reviewing the chat area for the questions. All right. So at this time, I want to introduce Councilmember Ryu. I'm going to unmute you, Councilman, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, David, and thank you for hosting this. And I want to say, I know we're scheduled for an hour. What I'm going to do is I have another meeting at 12:15 that I got to actually physically drive to. So what I'm going to do is go till about 50, and then I'll switch over to a phone so I can still drive in the car and talk to you guys. And my staff, Brad's on, and I think Milen is on as well, could answer additional questions afterwards. So, there's a lot of briefing things that I want to tell you about, but I'm just going to skip all over that. I'm going to let Milen and Brad talk about all the resources and all of your logistical questions, because I just want to address two things. And I just want to really have a personal conversation with you guys on exactly what it is that you need. But the first thing, obviously, we can't ignore is the murder of George Floyd. And, when Black Lives Matter, when you hear that term, Black Lives Matter, and when you see all the protests, Black Lives Matter is about how difficult it is being Black in America. It is the history of not just American racism, but pervasive racism through all cultures and throughout history regarding the color of your skin. As an Asian American, and I think a lot of you could also empathize as a woman, as a Jewish American, as, just think about all of the direct and subtle racism or discrimination that you felt. Sometimes you're just outright angry, like, how in the world did you do that or say that? Could you say that? And then other ones is very underlying, little like just a glance or just under the breath. And you're like, wow, in this day and age, how could that still happen? So knowing that, and as an Asian American feeling of getting lots of racism and discrimination, that pales in comparison to being Black in America, especially as a young Black man. Case in point, if you and I went jogging around the neighborhood, no one would probably say much. People might wave at us, but Dave, I think you're on twice, so it's creating a reverberation. You got to pause one of them. Mute one of your. Talking to Dave Phelps. Okay, thanks, Dave. So, but if you are an African American male jogging in a residential neighborhood, and this is not just saying something I'm hypothesizing, it actually happened, you could get shot and killed. Look at the next door posts. Look at all the ADT calls. So that's what it means. And it's a systemic racism that exists, that is pervasive, and that is so ingrained where, people don't even know the racism that is exhibited because we're so used to it. Because we see America through the eyes of white America. So that's what Black Lives Matter is. And that's why I just wanted to frame that backdrop, because it'll help explain the rage and the frustration. Because I lived in LA, and I lived through the 92 LA riots. And that's what shaped my life. That's what got me into public service. I said that will never happen again, and it should never happen again. And I went into public service, nonprofit work, immigration rights, you name it, and ran for office because of that. And here I am, some 30 years later, as a council member, and my worst fears of the LA of an uprising has happened again. It's a lot different, a lot of similarities, a lot of differences from 92. But nevertheless, this shows where, while there were lots of institutional changes that happened in 92, it wasn't enough. So I just wanted to set that backdrop. And the second thing is Leslie Elkin on? No. Well, Leslie, I owe Leslie a call. She contacted me on behalf of the bid. Let me know what it is. Besides all the city, state, federal programs, let me know personally what it is that I could do to help you guys. I mean, Leslie approached me about, she wanted some more money so she could start cleaning up and doing power washing. I really don't think it's power washing that we need right now. But if that's what you guys want, collaborate with the bid. Let me know what it is that you need. And I will either use my own discretionary funds or create another program or do whatever it is that you guys need help on. We're already pushing with the federal and the state government to make sure that there is direct relief to small business owners on the ground, not to the banks, hoping that the money will trickle down to the PPP and all of that. Some people are getting it, are lucky enough to get it, but many are not. It needs to go directly to you. So you could pay off the banks, not the banks asking for money because you didn't pay. Everything needs to go from the bottom up. And that's what I've been fighting for. I'm working with other council colleagues who are trying to reach property owners in mass to see how we could get them to renegotiate the leases. But I'm just going to end it there because I want to hear from you guys on exactly what it is that you need. And we'll get you those resources. David, is that all right? David Phelps?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I have pages full of stuff my staff wanted to tell you about all the different resources. But if you just go to my website, just go to my City Hall website, it's all there. Support for small businesses, things about PPE, state of everything that I could verbally say to you is all on my website. Okay, so I'm not going to waste time on that.
Everybody, please put your questions in the Zoom group chat. I'll start off with the first one. Councilman, can you tell us about the rollout of the mayor's task force and the new industry, some of the new industry regulations that are being released, and where are we at in terms of reopening the economy in the stages? I believe we're either in the beginning of stage 2, but we're all working towards stage 3, which is where we can start hosting community-focused meetings again in small groups. Where are we at in that process, and what do we need to do to progress to the next stage?
Yeah, so I got to tell you, I am, as a council member, I am equally as frustrated as you in many of the announcements that come down. We are in full support. We try to collaborate and communicate with the mayor's office as well as council colleagues, as well as the state and the feds, whenever these, and the county in particular, whenever these new information comes down. But if the unrest, if everything wasn't hard enough, the pandemic adds an extra hard layer. Like, for example, we should have been doing this in person, but we're doing it on Zoom. While it is convenient in certain ways, it is very inconvenient and very not conducive to communicating. So as much as I want to say, and it's not myself, I'm sure it's a lot of my colleagues get upset like, are you kidding me? Couldn't you guys give us a heads up when you made that announcement so I could at least let my people know? But there's only so many ways you could communicate. And there's Brown Act and all of this where in reality, some of the information that comes down, I literally get it, if I'm lucky, 10 minutes before you do. I literally get my briefings most of the time from the mayor's office and the county, especially public health department, from the press conferences. I don't want you to say it's bad. It's something obviously we need to learn going forward, and we're creating additional avenues for better communication. I mean, it's easy to say, and then of course the mayor, what's he going to do? Call everybody together to the emergency EOC? Because obviously he's telling everybody don't gather more than 10 people or 25 people, and you can't have government employees all gathering. So it is a very difficult conversation to have. But because we're meeting in the city council, we are doing, because we're the legislative body, it's a little bit harder for us to immediately implement. Trust me, the great ideas that I get and the great suggestions that I get from business owners and from you, I pass it along directly to the mayor. But I try to, balance how much I call and text the mayor, because I'm the council member, and the amount of emails, calls, texts directly that I get from not just regular constituents, but from grass top leaders like yourself that I have actual relationship with is tremendous. And I'm trying to just even, and thank you for many of those understanding for if I don't respond right away, because people think that, oh, you're not listening or you're ignoring me. No, I'm just, some of the information that you send has been sent 5 other times by the same, so I've actually seen it. And I pass it along to the mayor as well, but I try to be very judicious in how much I pass along, because if I'm calling the mayor every single day, he's not going to pick up my call either. Or if I keep on texting him, I mean, I'm sure my phone's blowing up. His phone is blowing up times 17, because there's 15 council members, the city attorney, and the controller, right? In addition to all the different other folks. So whenever that's why when you see the mayor, we many times in city council prepare a motion to do something, and the mayor, because we told the mayor, he already enacts it, because that's what he has as a mayor, as an executive branch, and as with the emergency powers. But other things, like especially restaurants opening, we're constantly trying to get clarification on, because it's not just the city of LA wanting to do X, Y, and Z. We have to get approval from the health department, which is not a city of LA jurisdiction. It's the county of LA jurisdiction. And if you think it's hard enough for us to get prior information out of our own city family, getting it from another jurisdiction, let alone the state jurisdiction, this is a problem that we're having up and down, where, the mayor would, I know he's in constant contact with the governor and everybody else, but I'm sure he would love to have more contact. And I'm sure that's what every other city in the state and every other county wants to contact the governor. And so that's kind of the struggle, but we are trying to make it as, I'm trying to take a common sense approach in everything. We're trying to, I think we are all in agreement, the mayor, the public health director, that we want to, especially when, let's just, for example, restaurants, we want to give you more space, because we're telling you have to do social distancing. I know there's like very vague guidelines, and there are direct guidelines, and sometimes guidelines are in flux. So I would say for those, ask me. But we want to open up sidewalks. We want to let you be able to convert your parking lots. I mean, whatever it takes to help you. But clearly, I'm saying this, but I have to get the check off from the public health department, all right? And building and safety, but everything on the city side, we're trying to expedite. So if you hit these roadblocks as we open, and as the mayor said, we're going to phase 3, but there's a high likelihood that, I mean, I don't want to say high likelihood, I'm not a public health official, but there is a potential that we could go backwards as well, right? Especially with all the protesting going on, which is very, very important for, especially to release the tensions. But when you have a huge gathering, clearly many public health officials are worried about a spike. So we have to be very careful of that. And if you do go out and protest, please wear a mask. please make sure about contact and everything else. And it's not just personal contact, it's what you touch, right? So if you could wear a glove, because it's the same thing. Just because you're wearing a mask, you're not protected. If someone touches something, if someone coughs, touches a railing, and then you go and touch the railing, it's the same transmission. So you just got to be extra careful. I don't know if that, David, if you want me to say something more specific, I'm sorry for kind of.
No, let's try to kind of do a lightning round with the questions. I've got a number of questions now.
Yeah.
Some of the businesses, are you hearing feedback on my end?
Yeah, I think you're, that's weird. Maybe it's the MC iPhone needs to pause. Needs to mute.
Okay, let's try this. Is that better?
Better, much better.
Okay. Some of the businesses don't fit neatly into any of the categories that are referenced in the reopening guidelines. Ceramic studios and art classes and things of that nature come to mind. Where can businesses of that nature go for info as to when their businesses can open?
The best way is to contact, send an email or send an email to Milen and Brad, your deputy for Sherman Oaks, because then what we will do is we will contact the mayor's office or the public health department. And we'll go and badger them to death to give us a clarification. And I'll be really honest with you. There are times where I got a clarification and the county and the mayor's office and the public health department sometimes gave me opposite information. So, and sometimes so I know, I see Christy shaking her head too. Yes. And I try to, and then it might take a couple of more hours to get that clarification, or sometimes we literally have to wait for the press conference to happen because they're literally debating till the announcement is literally made. Because sometimes I get heads up and it's the complete opposite that gets announced, right? So please bear with us, but those contradictions, let us know, because I wish I had the answers, and sometimes we do, because hopefully with the question you ask is someone who already asked that already, so we'll get that answer for you. And on top of that, we'll try to make it official, publicize it, or we ask them to say it out loud so they can't go back on their word.
Okay, Councilman, we have a question here. For restaurants or really any business, can you offer guidance when county and city guidelines differ, and which do we follow?
I would say it is safer to follow the county guidelines, the public health, especially for restaurants, the public health department. And then the county also there's the board of supervisors and the sheriff's department, but public health, everything. I would say the number one, when all else fails, do what public health tells you, because that's who we're asking. And right. And then, and in occasions, maybe public health didn't know all the nuances, so they will change their recommendation. But when all else fails, I would say public health, because that's who we go to as well as the master. And the only reason we go to the mayor's office and everybody else is because we can't get to public health, right? So, and we're hoping that they have a more updated information. So when all else fails, public health.
LA County Department.
Los Angeles County Public Health Department.
I 100% agree.
And LA County has their press conference about 12 o'clock noon on every day.
Yes. Okay, next question. With police reform being requested, what are some of the options being discussed now? 6 years ago, there was a suggestion to the council member regarding police union reform and reintroducing beat cops in our business neighborhoods so community relations can be reestablished. There's a sense that the city needs this. What can we do?
Yes, in community policing, any which way you look at it, whether it's a beat cop or whether it's senior lead officers or whether, and it's senior lead officers coming to your meeting, more police officers on bicycles, the more on the ground, boots on the ground, visible is something that I fully embrace and support. Now we have the white shirts, right, which is the volunteer police force. And actually the Van Nuys Sherman Oaks division has one of the largest volunteer police forces, which is a force multiplier and augmenter where they just drive around. So I fully support that, and that's something that we have been implementing, but obviously, clearly, it wasn't moving fast enough. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at what's going around in where a lot of the protesters and activists are trying to push the people's budget. If you heard that, and if you haven't, you could just Google it. I quite frankly support pretty much all of the fundamental concepts of the people's budget. And a lot of people are saying, why don't you just say that? Because you know what? It's not about it. Right now, it is so unique, weird time where I just said it, but it doesn't mean anything unless you tweet it. And it's tweeting is very, and sometimes a little dangerous. I'm more about effectuating change than just talking about change, right? So when I say I support the fundamental values of the people's budget, it's exactly what Dave just said. It's trying to reduce more of the militarized police force into more of a community-centric public safety force, right? And that, I think everybody agrees, right? We want more, and even the police officers agree that their role has gone beyond the role of a policing. They're social workers, they're mental health workers, they're homeless advocates. I mean, they are not trained to do any of that. They don't want to do any of that, and they should not be doing any of that. And that's why, how do we, instead of LAPD officers being called in, and sometimes they have to be called in, right? How do we have like a different type of social services strike team that goes out? Burglary reports after a burglary is done. If there's no burglary in a robbery in currently happening and it's long gone and it's 10 hours later to get a police report, you don't really need a police officer with a gun and a badge to come in to take that police report. We could probably have a sworn officer come in and take that police report. And that way it frees up that police officer to do something else more important, that's more in line with their job, while you have other folks doing it. So that's what the people-centered budget talks about. But the problem is it combines the city, the county, and LAUSD. We all want to invest more in education. That is a key priority, but that is the school board. The city of LA has zero jurisdiction over LAUSD. We technically can take our money and give it to LAUSD, but that's probably not something we want to do because there's plenty of things that we need to do in the city. Mental health workers, social workers, sounds great, right? Well, we don't have the mental health department. We don't have a public social services department. We don't have the public health department or a health department. Those are all from the county. So the question becomes, it's not like, oh, let's just hire a lot more people and create these teams. How do we hire? Do we contract with the county? Do we contract with a nonprofit? Do we create our own Department of Mental Health? And by the way, the Department of Mental Health for the County of LA alone is $2 billion, right? So for us to create yet another department of $500 million or $1 billion, a sphere of work that we are not competent in, these are all the bigger questions that we need to do. So what I'm trying to do is work with my colleagues behind the scenes to try to come with the advocates and the activists and see a common ground, right? So right now it's all about police budget. Do you support the increase or not support the increase? That's not the right question. The right question is, for one, when we're cutting social services and we're increasing just the police budget, that's not only does it not look right, but right now we need more, just how people would maybe advocate that we need more policing, we need more social services. The pandemic, even before the pandemic, we had a huge homeless crisis and a housing crisis. It is blowing out of control. So people who are vulnerable needed the help more than ever, and they need it even more now. So that's where is what we're trying to balance. Sorry for the long answer. I got to do shorter answer. Sorry.
That's okay. We have a question regarding schools.
Mm-hmm.
As long as schools are closed, it is hard for lower income people to take care of children. So it's easier to collect unemployment and stay home. We need school daycare for working families. And obviously social distancing is an issue. What can we do to address this?
That is the biggest question that we struggle with every single day. I personally want everything open. I mean, we need the schools to open, we need the businesses to open, but when the schools open, I'm sure you saw some pictures from Asia where the kids are all masked up and, gloved up. I mean, how does that look like? I mean, I don't envy LAUSD. We want to open the schools, yet we don't want to put our children in harm's way. So, what the person who asked that question, they are absolutely correct. But we don't want to do something to make things even worse. And that's where, in a way, I am very frustrated with the public health department for not giving us faster answers. But at the same time, I don't envy their position because, these are life consequence decisions. So, and I'm sure we all have 101 thoughts on how it should be done. And if you do, please give it to me because I'll share it along. But we really need to make sure it's based on science, based on health, and based on facts. So, but it's that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to figure out how. And that's why with restaurants, and a lot of the ideas, by the way, came from restaurateurs themselves asking us, and that's why we're having a strike force that is going to help re-permit, give you permission to use your parking lot for tables. We're trying to get rid of all the various regulations so you could put stuff on your sidewalk, right? And all of this stuff. So ideas are coming more from the business sector. And actually the mayor has a task force. I don't know where they're at right now with business leaders and school and various leaders and to figure out how we could get it done faster, open faster.
Thank you. We have another, well, you kind of went into it a little bit with the restaurants. And you mentioned, right before everything happened with George Floyd, we had a meeting with some business leaders and presidents of the SOHA and some of the Studio City groups. And we discussed some of those ideas, and then everything changed very quickly. So I wanted to kind of circle back on where are we with regard to the timeline on easing the restrictions for parking lot use so that restaurants can expand their seating either in the back or in the front, the sidewalk, and what can we do as a business community to help support the city in that transition?
Yeah, so we're obviously, because of what everything happened, and rightfully so, we're those departments that are not working on civil unrest is the departments we're pushing on. I haven't gotten an update from my staff because I personally have been so focused on what's going on with the unrest and the budget and everything else and trying to make sure that we restore the cuts. So actually, I don't know if Milen or Brad has an update on that. They could chime in, but also another thing that I've been focusing on is I've been going back to, my prime focus is what's going on with the unrest, but my secondary focus is the COVID testing and tracing, because I think that is the underlying fundamental thing behind everything, opening schools, opening restaurants, opening everything. And I don't know if many know, but I pushed heavily. I majorly advocated to get more testing in LA some 3 months ago. And if I had a little part in making sure testing started to increase in Los Angeles, I'll gladly take credit, but obviously it's not just me, it's a lot of other folks. And I partnered up with the county 3 months ago to buy testing from South Korea. And that's when everyone was, just all over the place. And since then, we now have the most testing done than any other city in the nation. But that's not an accolade we should rest on, because when you're comparing yourself to F students, everything else looks good, right? So let's not be satisfied with the C. We need to get a B and an A. So not only do we need more testing, but we need tracing. There's been lots of work on tracing. It's been more with the mayor's office, but now that the city council is meeting regularly, I'm going to start inquiring and figuring out exactly where the tracing part is, because testing without tracing really doesn't mean anything. And then it's not just tracing, but it's isolation and the treatment model. We have the testing and the treatment, but we're missing the middle pieces. And that's something we're going to dissect and dive into, because it's not just the protest where a lot of people are congregating, but as winter rolls around, and it's going to be here a lot faster than you know it, we do not want to see that potential second spike or second wave that everyone is talking about.
Councilman, I want to thank you, take this time to thank you for partnering with us since early April. We've been partnering with you and Mend Urgent Care and Westfield to do testing locally in Sherman Oaks, and we've been doing that since April 2nd. And I think we've tested over 3,000 people at this point. I'm not sure if the testing is still occurring into June, but thank you for providing the tests themselves. And we were lucky enough to have the UCLA School of Nursing to help administer those tests. And we're one of the few, kind of private coalitions that came together and brought the drive-through testing to the Valley, very early on in the process. So thank you for doing that, Councilman.
Yeah. Does Milan or Brad, ask Milan or Brad, see if they have information on the restaurants, the permitting and all that? They probably.
Yeah. Milan just posted the application for sidewalk and private parking lot dining.
Oh, great.
I will say that there are a couple of questions and comments about there being a one-stop shop that's more local, maybe based out of your office, that will allow businesses or restaurants that need these kind of conditional use permits to get it easily approved.
Yes, but can I have Milan? I think Milan could chime in. Can you unmute her?
Yes.
There. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, the city did already launch the LA Fresco program, and that's a streamlined program to get outdoor dining permits on sidewalks and private parking lots. I know that many of you have already heard about that. Those permits last for 90 days and they expire on September 1st, 2020. I know Cobra was having discussions about how we can streamline that more with our office, who the point person would be to help with those applications. So I think that's something that, we would discuss internally and who would be the point for that. And there is questions around dining with alcoholic beverages, and that guidance also needs to come from the city planning department as well.
And I think ABC is also requiring stuff, and I think ABC has been a little difficult to coordinate with in regards to the other permits. Yeah, so those specific questions with ABC, I mean, you can send those to me directly and I can follow up with city planning and, see how we can help those kind of on a piecemeal basis. That's great. Could you post your email address in the chat? Sure. Thank you.
And I'm assuming ABC as in the State Alcohol Bureau Control, right? You're talking.
Correct.
Yeah, so, and what we could also do is Milan could reach out to Adrien Nazarian's office, your assembly member, and Senator Hertzberg's office, who are both very supportive and we always work with. So if there are once we identify what the specific flaw is or problem is, we could ask them to pass the legislation or ask them to call ABC and streamline that as well. And I'm sure without even asking them, I know they'll be supportive already. So, and you could also contact them directly as well. But, and Dave Phelps knows all of them. So.
Question regarding PPE.
Mm-hmm.
We have businesses, in addition to owners and their employees and staff needing PPE to conduct business, there are businesses that bring people in larger groups. Tutoring businesses like Mathnasium come to mind, where children are coming in. They're already trying to reopen after being closed for several months. And now they're being asked to take on the additional cost of providing PPE, not only for their staff, but for their customers. Mm-hmm. Is there any discussion happening on the county or the city level with regard to providing small businesses with assistance in getting some of these supplies?
Well, you know, the PPE issue is a worldwide issue. Honestly, it is literally a lack of leadership from the federal government. I mean, I don't want to shift blame, but there needed to be a central focus, a central point where everything was gathered, but it wasn't happening. So every state, every nation in the world is fending for themselves. So we're asking the federal government, we're having a hard time just making sure that our own first responders, I don't want to say a hard time because actually we're fine compared to other cities and other states, but we're trying to make sure that the first responders like hospitals, clinics, all get it. All the PPE donations that I get, I've been giving it to healthcare nurses, long-term healthcare workers, Planned Parenthood. I mean, I'm trying to give it to all these different groups that need it more. If I get more donations, I will definitely pass it along to, I gave it out to the Sherman Oaks Hospital. And actually the neighborhood council made a lot, and I actually got more donations and we gave it to them as well. But if I get more donations, I will pass it along to the chamber. But what we're trying to do is we're asking the feds that we need relief. I don't care if they call it PPE support or if they call it paycheck, whatever they want to call it, we're supporting. Because it's literally, if we support you here, then that just frees up money for you to fill up all these other holes. So whatever holes we could fill. So what we can do in the city of LA is that's why we're trying to waive permit fees. We're trying to streamline processes. I'm joining Councilmember Monica Rodriguez to phase out the gross receipts tax for restaurants. I mean, I've been an advocate for phasing out gross receipts tax from throughout. So for the time being, it's not passed yet, but I see that's very, it's very minimal, honestly, but it still matters. Every little bit counts. So while I might not be able to get you some sort of direct subsidy for PPEs, we'll make sure that we try to help out everywhere else. But that's not to say that we can't. We'll see, because we're going to be revisiting the entire budget. It's going to be a very challenging budget because obviously anything you mention is all worthy. But it's a matter of where we have to make those cuts. And actually, I'm hoping we don't make cuts at all. And some people might not like this, but I'm actually advocating that we go into our reserves. We had about $500 million in reserves because we had a very healthy economy and we saved away, we squirreled away a lot of money, and these reserves are for a rainy day. But if this is not a rainy day, I don't know what is. And I understand the need to save money, but this is the thing. And people said, well, wait, what about the big earthquake or fire? Absolutely correct. So what I'm doing is I'm asking for a study done in the previous fires in the Northridge earthquake. How much did we actually draw down from the reserves? How much do we what's the minimum we need? Because right now we're looking at a $250 million cut, but if we fill it, then we don't have to have any cuts. Right? And then people say that's so irresponsible. But the reality is the federal government, without the federal government, we're all screwed. Sorry, excuse my French, but it is, because if this goes on for 6 months, I mean, it's already been 3 months. If this goes on for any longer, no matter what budgeting tricks or gimmicks we do, save money here or there, it's all going down. So instead of cutting services or cutting anything or reducing what we help you, cutting that only to backfill it when the federal government finally gets their act together and gives us money, it's like you cut off your nose to put it back on. Let's not do that. Let's save it. And yes, if the federal government doesn't bail us out next year, the following budget year, it's going to be an even bigger cut. But you know what? Right now is a critical moment. If we just if we didn't increase services and kept at the same levels as last year, that's still not enough, right? I'm sure everybody here will agree. That's nowhere. You need more help. So that's why I'm saying, look, we got to go into the rainy day fund. It is pouring right now, and I want to make sure we restore all of our cuts and see if we could even increase spending on some of the areas, because we got to jumpstart the economy. We got to jumpstart people, because people need help.
Okay, I have caught up on all of the questions so far. Councilmember,
Oh,
You wanna
actually,
hop-
there's a question down there. N95s, yes. The
Oh,
prices
okay.
are going down.
Good eye.
And actually, N95 is US made. That's why they have the N. If it's foreign made, it's KN95. So recently there was a huge price drop because what happened was there was a lot of fake goods that were being shipped. And actually the FDA approved about 200 companies when it came to PPEs, but they finally had the time to go back and reevaluate all of them. From the 200 plus companies that they approved for FDA approval, like the KN95s and all of that, they rejected majority of them and only 14 companies are now approved. So 186 companies got rejected. So overnight, all those companies, because if you see the FDA forms and all the certificates, they're very easy to forge, right? And in many cases, the brokers who are bringing it from Asia or Europe, they truly believe that because it's someone that they worked with for a long time. They truly believe it's the real thing, but somewhere it could get hijacked. I mean, all sorts of funky pirating stuff is happening. So a lot of it is becoming fake. So those 186 companies, those prices went from the KN95s were going for which are the masks, KN95s, were going for like $3. Well, it was like $7 at one point, but now going for $3. Now they're going for, I heard, 85 cents, right? So that might be an option for restaurants or businesses to buy because there's even though they're not they disapproved by the FDA, they're still good. The problem is N95 means 95% filtration rate, but with the filtration rate, there's a middle fabric, smelted fabric that really does all the filtering. What they're doing to cut costs is they're using a thinner fabric or not using that at all. So these masks actually work, but they might actually be 50. When you actually test it, it might be a 50% filtration rate or a 60% filtration rate, which is not good enough for a medical, someone in the emergency room, right? But for someone just walking around, it's fine, right? So I know everyone said, and this is not official yet, and the health department saying don't use N95. Well, you shouldn't use N95s. That should only be for healthcare professionals. But a lot of the KN95s, healthcare professionals should not be using it. But if you're in the front desk or something like that, that's something that you could use. And it's obviously still just as good, if not better, than the cloth masks, right? So the prices of these KN95s are coming down tremendously. So I saw that question there. So I wanted to give you a comment on that. So Dave, I'm sorry, go ahead. You wanted to. Are we done? Really? Wow.
I think we're out of questions at the moment. Unless anybody have any quick questions for the council member, you can raise your hand in the chat section or in the participant section if you want to ask a quick question before we let the council member go.
Okay, well, I'm going to be able to make my meeting.
Go ahead, Christy.
All right. So I asked it, but I'm not sure if you wanted someone else to answer it. But for the outdoor dining, which I found LA Fresco easy. But is it a realistic request upon your office or upon the city for an alley closure along our property? We have parking lots divided by an alley. Is that a realistic request to follow up with your office on, or for customer and staff safety, or is that just something that would not going to happen?
No, yes, I think so. Actually, a matter of fact, in Larchmont Village, they have an alley as well, and the farmers market requested the same thing. So we're looking into that.
Okay.
I personally, there is no stupid ideas. There is no crazy ideas. Every idea will be taken considered. I think we could do it, but obviously we have to talk to street services and sanitation, and possibly even talk to some of the other businesses in the area. If you could talk to the other businesses in the area, because they might be like, this is how I get to my parking spot, or
Right.
But there's two entrances, but especially where Casa Vega is, I think it's very doable. But we have to do through our check boxes. But I personally would support it, but I have to talk to the various departments. And actually, we're already in discussion. So Milan, you could talk to Rob and Nikki because it's already in discussions at another neighborhood.
Okay, great. And temporarily, I'm going to put like a crossing safety security guard if we wind up opening before that happens. But
Sure.
I don't think we'll open for a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. And quite frankly, I got to carefully say this. A lot of the ideas that the public health department in the city ends up implementing is because we saw somebody do it.
Okay.
And it was like, and like I said, because there's no right idea or wrong idea, if it works and if it's safe and, and it's not a permanent thing, by the way, right? It's just right now, right? So yeah. And clearly what someone thinks behind their desk and writes it down might seem logical, but the reality might be completely different, right? So that's where we need on the ground experience, like from you guys, especially the business community, to let me know, Councilmember, this makes no sense, right? And we'll try to figure out why that was even made and change it.
And just one more thing, when you talk to the officials, maybe Aaron can kind of, commiserate with me on this, but the table requirements, and we'll follow the county is 6 and then the city is 10. I have 4 kids myself. That means like my parents couldn't dine with us out to dinner. So it's a little crazy, but if that could be brought up in any of the discussions that, I feel that as business owners, we have more put upon us. Like we have to discriminate. We have to tell them not to socialize or mingle. But there's 5,000 protesters, which I fully support and, was in one myself. But it's a little hard and hypocritical of the city and the county to put so much on businesses when clearly they're allowing people to gather.
Yeah, no, well, we're not allowing people to gather. It is a First Amendment right, and a lot of people think that we're permitting these protests. Actually, we're not, and actually, they don't require a permit because it's First Amendment right to assemble and free speech. So we're not allowing anything. We're trying to let people know, and I'm sure the press is also saying the same thing, where people should be careful. There is one protest march that I am supporting, and I am trying to work with the West Hollywood on figuring out how to make it correct, safe and healthy. And then that's the Pride March for the 50th anniversary. And I think it's because I personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of my colleagues or the city, but I personally feel that we need to have organized, designated protest. It's happening, whether you agree or disagree with the protest, it's happening. I personally think we should help organize it, right? So people are safe. So we could say, this is a free speech protest zone, right? Whether it's in front of City Hall and Olive Grand Park and say, hey, this is your space. I think we need to do more of that, but clearly there's many differing opinions, right? There's the health aspect, there's, but the Pride March, which was brought to my attention, which will go from Hollywood to West Hollywood, that I'm supporting, and people are trying to figure out, probably going to have to put sanitizing stations everywhere, and ask people to social distance. I mean, it's going to be challenging, but if we don't embrace it, it's going to happen anyways. So I think it's better for us to embrace it and try to make it safe as possible. And the other thing, and one thing you mentioned, and this is something that we have to look into. The other thing about social distancing in restaurants, I haven't been able to follow up and if it's changed yet, but for families, it's kind of silly for them to have to social distance, right? Because if they're already a family, they're already living together, they probably don't need the every other chair or something like that. So how do you identify that? And that's something that we're aware of. And I think, Aaron, did you want to add to that? David, I think Aaron wanted to add.
The social distancing in the restaurants, the guidelines they gave were a little confusing. There's some things that are kind of contradictory. There's a lot of contradictory stuff in the county health guidelines. The tables only have to be 4 feet apart because then theoretically the people should be 6. And the barriers are kind of an odd situation because you can have a barrier between people back to back and you're fine, but it's got to be made out of certain materials only. So it's kind of a little bit difficult to deal with. There's just a lot of contradictory information that's going on with the guidelines that I'm finding a little bit of difficulty with, especially when all the neighboring counties don't have nearly as many restrictions. One of the big ones for me that just rubbed me really wrong as a restaurateur was the face shields on all the servers. Face masks, no problem. Gloves, no problem. I'm even good with protective eyewear. But as a consumer, do you want to sit down and come up to somebody with a full face shield, a full face mask saying, what can I serve you dinner with? It just seems over the top. And it just seems like it's not going to help people going out to getting people back into restaurants at all. And we're fighting restrictions we're fighting the restrictions of running limited capacities. We're going to have a big problem being able to keep the revenue going enough to cover all these additional costs. But some of it just seems way beyond the scope of what is necessary. And it's not that I am not one, we're not even opening yet. We want to make sure everything is in really good order, but it's a little over the top and a little confusing because the county contradicts the city, which somewhat contradicts the state. So it's just like kind of all over the map. It'd be nice to get a little bit more clarity on that and really where what we have to do versus some says we suggest doing this, but it doesn't say it's required. And then you get an inspector in, and let me tell you, it's required to one and not to another. So we're going to be dealing with a lot of objective inspectors that are really, they're going to be very tough.
Yeah. So when that happens, when there's issues like that, that's when you could contact my office.
Okay.
I'm going to switch over to phone.
Okay. We're also not allowed to even have speakers in the outside area to have music.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks. I mean, we're trying to create a dining experience. I don't know if we're even allowed to use regular silverware. I'm still having a tough time with that one. One's saying you have to use plastic. The other's saying you can use, we're sanitizing everything anyways. So it's not very clear. Like I said, I was the one who brought up the question on the checklist. It's not very clear.
Okay. Sandy, you have a question?
Regarding the restaurants, Ventura has been open for at least 3 weeks that I know, because I've been out there 2 weeks ago and last week with restaurants opening and everything like that. And I'm wondering if the city has any information where more than 2 weeks after they really started opening up, are they getting a big influx of disease, or is it not? And if they're not, then that's an indication that we got to do the same thing. This is a terrible thing, but it's still a very small percentage. Raise your hand if anyone knows anyone that's got COVID. 1 out of 2, 3 people out of 19 or whatever was on the group. Those 3, if I add up those 3, that's 19 total that I've asked this question to for almost 3 weeks. And I've only heard 19 people say they know someone that has COVID. So this disease is bad, and I think it's terrible, but it's shutting down our economy and the restaurants. It's hard. The restaurants can't make a living at 35, 40% down. There's no way they can do it. So we have to get back to normal, and maybe there's some risk involved. But, again, we have the city or the state or the federal government, whatever it is, trying to micromanage a business, and it's really terrible.
So, Councilman, I know you switched to a phone. Can you raise your hand on the app to let me know where you are so I can unmute you? Okay, there we go.
All right, sorry about it. I was talking earlier. I didn't know I was muted. Yes, you know, I unfortunately know. So, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I unfortunately, and maybe it's because it's my job, my role as a council member. I know about 2-3 individuals who have passed from COVID. But yes, when it comes to the real-time information of restaurants being open for 2 weeks and what the new rates of infections are, that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. Not just testing, but tracing. You know, and we need to get better answers from the health department, and as well as seeing our own city efforts for tracing. If the county's not going to do it, what are we doing? Because that is the most critical component. Because those data sets will help us determine, those data sets and facts will help us determine on which direction to go in. So yeah, that's the information I don't have, and that we're waiting for still from the public health department. And when it comes to, I guess, some of the requirements like the face shield, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen when restaurants open. It might be where if restaurants where the waiters don't have face shields, maybe they might not want to go to, or how many people are going to, I personally feel a lot of people are going to go back to restaurants right away, but we just don't know at what level. So I think it's more of as we go and as things progress, and the most important key factor is infection rates and the death rates, or morbidity rates. As they go down, I could see the public health department relaxing these restrictions. So it's a challenge on all fronts.
Breaking news, the Senate just passed the House's bill on easing restrictions for borrowers of the PPP. This is very good news for anyone who has taken out PPP loans and has been concerned about the spending window and what you can spend it on. It's my understanding that the utility payment eligibility is being expanded. I also think that it's lowering the payroll requirement from 75% to 60% of the forgivable amount. That's huge, which means that you can spend up to 40% on utility-related payments. And the measure extends the loan term from 2 years to 5 years. So this is great news. Oh, and it extends the time period in which borrowers must spend their PPP loans from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. That is really good news. I'm very happy to hear that. I want to respect the council members' time and everyone. We said we were going to end at 12. Unless there's any other. I got muted. I want to take a moment to thank Councilmember Ryu for joining us today. We have been talking, the council member and his staff and I and Leslie with the bid. We've been in communication a lot in the last few days about the statuses of businesses in the area and making sure that we're responding quickly, that the LAPD is responding quickly. And I just can't thank the council member enough for staying in close communication with us, not just his staff, but himself, to stay on top of this and to make sure that we have businesses to go back to when we can fully open. So thank you, council member, for your time. We appreciate your partnership with us and the community. And any parting words?
Yes, thank you, Dave, for really hosting this, and thank you. I really wanted to just have a straight conversation with you guys and see what we could do to support. I am doing everything possible, but I am very open to ideas. And Dave, if you could personally give my apologies to Leslie, because I still haven't been able to call her, but let her know. You know, whatever you guys want that I could do to support, because I know like I said, the last thing was for certain things to be done in the Boulevard. But if whatever you guys decide on will be the best thing to help Sherman Oaks businesses, I'll either, like I said, use my own discretionary funds or find other city funds to create that program. You know, there are, like for example, we recently got reached out by the Carpenters Union, who are willing to come in and help board up any stores that were damaged. But at the same time, once they're done with that, I think they're probably willing to even help do repairs or anything else. So there's lots of resources out there, publicized and not publicized. So whatever it is that you guys come up with or need, I'd be glad to assist. So, but I really want to thank you guys for your time, and and if we need to do this again, we'll definitely do it again. It's not a problem. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone else.